Boom, Iowa Hawkeye Nation. We are live reacting to the Iowa versus Nebraska game. Final score, good guys 40, bad guys 16. Iowa wins their third straight Hy-Vee Heroes Trophy game. And there were many heroes in this game. There were also many star players for the Hawkeyes that helped them on this win. They have won now 10 out of the last 11 in the season, and they have won it not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, not six, but 7 straight games in Lincoln, Nebraska. It's crazy how Iowa has owned these teams on the road. We talked about Iowa State, we talked about Minnesota. The way that the Hawkeyes have owned these teams on the road, not losing them on the road since pre-COVID for most of these teams. And obviously that streak was broken this year with the Cyclones. But Iowa finishes the regular season 8-4. I predicted Iowa to go 9-3. The only difference was I predicted Iowa to beat Indiana and beat Iowa State. I predicted them to lose to Penn State, Oregon, and USC. And they ended up losing to Oregon and USC. So props to my part, but I just didn't get that Indiana loss in. And if I would have known how good Indiana was looking, I probably would have picked Indiana in that game. But it's still, I still think Iowa should have beat Iowa State. But here we are again, 8-4 for a second consecutive season. 3 out of the last 4 seasons Iowa's finished finished the season with 8 wins. This year they're guaranteed to at least win 8 games, which is really good for the Hawkeyes because that's exactly what we want to see out of this program, is continuing to elevate to the next level. This is probably the best 8-4 season Iowa's had. I think about the 2018 8-4 season. So if you take out, let's see this actually now, 3 out of the last 6 seasons Iowa's finished 8-4 in the regular season. 2018, 24 in this year. But this is probably the best 8-4 season I've seen out of our boys. They lose 4 games, all the ranked teams at the time. 3 of them end up being ranked, and they win by a combined margin. They lose those 4 games by a combined margin of 15 points. Obviously, that's heartbreaking. But man, if you would have told me that, a lot of us pushed past that Penn State that Penn State win because Penn State doesn't look very good this year. But if you would have told me that Iowa would have just, it wasn't easy. They had to come back. But if we would have gone into that Penn State game thinking what we were thinking and going into that Oregon game, this has been just such an interesting season. This really has been a 3-layered season. You start off the season with all this hype, and then it's like, through weeks 1 and 5, it's just kind of like a downhill train. Gronowski doesn't look good against Albany, and then against Iowa State looks a little bit better against UMass Rutgers, and then Indiana, he gets hurt, and then it's like boom. Those first 5 games, it's basically been split into each bye. Going up until that first bye when Iowa was 3-2, it's like, hey, we just lost 2 games in September. We're going to October, and we're 3-2. That's the first time Iowa had gone into the month of October 3-2 ever. I mean, I don't remember a time when Iowa lost so many games in September. I don't think Iowa's ever lost 2 games in September. I don't actually, I'm trying to think, like even in that 22 season, they lost only 1 game in September. Last year, they lost only 1 game in September. The year before, they went undefeated. No, they lost 1 game in September. So it's really hard to remember the last time Iowa was in a position like this and when, they kind of faltered and fell like they did this year. But man, it's just like that beginning of the season, you're 3-2 halfway through. You so far have a combined losses by 8 points, which, in particular is pretty good to say, hey, we're 3-2, but our losses are by 8 points combined. And then you go through October and you go undefeated in the month of October. You get a bye week to start off October, and then you have the blowout win at Wisconsin, then that comeback win against Penn State. They were down 21-10, and then you just blow the doors off Minnesota 41-3, and then you get another bye. So you go undefeated in October. Here you are now setting up that Oregon game. We know what happens. Iowa gets a go-ahead touchdown with under 2 minutes to go to take the lead, and Oregon marches right down the field. But man, if you would have told me at the beginning of the season that Iowa would have been in playoff contention going into that Oregon game, yeah, in my preview I picked them to be 7-1 at that time, 7-1 at that time. But man, I think that would have really surprised me. Honestly, whenever I make my preseason picks, I always say Iowa's going to lose a game that you don't think they're going to lose, that they do. But every single game that Iowa was favored in this year, they won, and every single game Iowa was not favored in, they lost. There was not a single game this year. Iowa literally did what people predicted. Obviously at the beginning of the season, they were not predicted to beat Penn State, and they weren't predicted to lose to Indiana. Maybe they were predicted to lose to Indiana. But yeah, overall, it kind of evens out. I'm not surprised they went 8-4. I think we're actually lucky because once they started 3-2, or even after the first 2 weeks, I was like, man, if we can even get to bowl eligibility, this would be impressive. But they find a way. They put themselves in a position where they're in the top 20, second week in November. They had a chance. They were close, but man, here we are again, mediocre football through some stretches. But it shows like today, and that's that. Talking a lot about the season. Let's talk about today a little bit more because today was super fun. I think this game and the Nebraska game just have reserve. I mean, this game and the Michigan State game just have um, switched results. I think this seemed more like what we thought the Michigan State game was going to be like, and that Michigan State game seemed more like a Nebraska game. That definitely seemed more like a Nebraska game. Iowa comes back and kicks a game-winning field goal, and then they would have blown out Michigan State instead. But I like the way it went this time. That yes, Iowa did get the win against Michigan State, but against a better Nebraska team, you blow them out on the road. That looks way better on your resume. And the nicest part was Iowa only lost one Big Ten road game this year. They ended the road stretch 3-2, but they only lost one road game, and that was that game previously at USC. So to win in Big Ten play, you get 4 road games, and you go. You get 5. Oh my goodness, I can't even speak. They played 4 road games in the Big Ten Conference, and they went 3-1. That's really good because the last year Iowa lost 3 Big Ten road games: Ohio State, Michigan State, UCLA. They only won 2 Big Ten road games. So to have that where you go, hey, this year we go 3-1 on Big Ten road games, and overall their road record wasn't too bad. 3-2. That Iowa State lost early in the season. Home record last year and the year before, and the year before that, they had only lost 1 home game combined, 23, 24, 21, and 20 and 19. They had all those seasons, they had lost 1 home game. This year they lost 2. 2018 they lost 2. 22 they lost 3 home games. So still good to get a 5-2 record out of Kinnick Stadium because Iowa's starting to really get better at playing home. I feel very confident about Iowa at home. If you feel like, when you're playing these big games at Kinnick, which we're going to allude later in about 26 schedule because I think the 26 schedule is so critical into the way this Iowa team is going to continue to play and the way we're going to continue to see this Iowa program work because they have a very similar schedule that they did this year, appearing so far in 26. It's maybe a bit looking at it, it's maybe a bit easier than we looked at this year's schedule at the beginning of the season, but I honestly think it might be harder than how this year's schedule ended up turning out because you feel like you should have beat Indiana and Iowa State. I think Indiana's the best team you played so far this year, but in the fact that you feel like you should have beat them. But the Oregon and USC game were really kind of not winnable at the beginning of the season in my mind. Obviously, it became more winnable than Oregon game, especially that USC game, but I mean, every game Iowa played this year was winnable. It's not like Iowa got blown out. It's not like you were going on the road to the shoe and you were like, hey, we're going to get beat like we have in the last couple of years, and more alluding to it because next year they have good road games, but nothing too difficult. But yeah, again, Gronowski, we'll talk about him real quick. He had 2 rushing touchdowns tonight. He didn't actually score last game, so he broke his streak of scoring in every single game, but he kind of responded with 2 and got back to that number. Broke the Iowa season single rushing record. I think it was over 430 yards. He's still got a bowl game to go. I believe he's going to play. But man, hell of a job with Mark Gronowski. He came into a program that was struggling, that had not had competent football. Just real quick, let's talk. Nate Stanley, C.J. Beathard, the last 2 competent Iowa quarterbacks. Nate Stanley, C.J. Beathard both started for 3 years. C.J. 14, 15, 16. Nate 17, 18, 19. Both of them had amazing careers. Both of them had very big wins. They were easily able to beat ranked teams. And then you get Spencer Petras. And Spencer Petras, till that Penn State game, the last time Iowa beat a ranked team, which I can't believe they have not beat a ranked team in 13 tries, and it's been over 4 years. But since that time Iowa beat Penn State, Spencer Petras was just a bad quarterback. And before that, I wouldn't even say he was an amazing quarterback. He had a good, solid season in 20 and beginning in 21. But after that, his career just completely fell off the rails. And then I think, really, this is how this Iowa football program has gone. You kind of had, you kind of talk, let's just go back 2009. You're kind of way up here, and then, 2010, 2011, 2012, you're all the way down here. And then you start kind of building a little bit. 14, 15, you shoot up here. 16, you kind of drop. 17, you kind of drop. 18, 19, 20, you're building. 21, you're building. But then back in 20, you drop back down. 22, Iowa kind of builds back up in 23. Little drop in 24. But this year, this is probably the best team that I think they've had since either 2015 or 2009. People are going to claim that this team is a fraud because they couldn't beat a ranked team. 2015 couldn't. They did beat a ranked Northwestern team, but they didn't really play anyone. This team did play a lot of people, but Iowa had won 10 games in their last, every other year since 17. They were 15, 19, 21, 23. They all won 10 games in that season. So no wonder I predicted Iowa to be in that 10 range stretch. And obviously they could still get to 9 wins with a bowl game. And, that would be 1 off 10, and I wouldn't be mad about that. I mean, this is a tough schedule. I think a lot of people thought Iowa couldn't even make a bowl game. But again, just the way we've improved since Stanley is a little bit disappointing. Petrus comes in during that COVID year, like I talked about, that momentum. He looked good until that Penn State game, but then he really just took a drop in 22, and he couldn't be a competent quarterback. He didn't have that rushing to him. He had a solid arm, but he wasn't that competent of a quarterback. He would throw a lot of interceptions. And then, obviously, Cade McNamara comes in, and everybody's like, this is going to be the savior of Iowa football. What does he do? 4 games into the 23 season, he tears his ACL. Enter Deacon Hill, the worst starting quarterback in college football history. I don't know how that guy went 7-1 in that regular season to finish Iowa off that season. I don't know how he did that. He almost went undefeated, honestly, if they would have beat Minnesota. But Deacon Hill got an easy schedule, and Iowa rolled. If that Iowa team has that schedule this year, because they beat Penn State, they would go undefeated. I don't see any losses on that schedule. Thinking about, Iowa State. Shoot. Well, how this Iowa team played this year with that schedule, they would have gone 11-1. So positivity to Iowa, but again, the schedule is different now. This isn't your Big Ten West days anymore. I've been telling people, I've been saying, you're having your Northwestern, Purdue, Illinois games being replaced with USC, Washington, UCLA, and Oregon on, mixed around, right? You're having those new Big Ten teams being replaced, and you can't play like Iowa did. I mean, this year against USC, Iowa was up 21-7. That game was replacing an at Northwestern game. When you're up 21-7 at Northwestern, you can run the ball every single play, and you're going to win the game. And it's different. Iowa's adjusting. I think Iowa learned from that first experience at UCLA. Obviously, they lost to a bad UCLA team, but I think they played much better in that USC game than they did at UCLA because Iowa's learning. But next year, they do have to go on the road to West Coast, but it's not California. It is Washington. So let's just jump in a little bit quickly to the schedule. Obviously, only the non-conference games are set, and I really like this non-conference schedule. It's all 3 of them are home. So it's Northern Illinois, then it's then it's home against Iowa State, then it's UNI. That Iowa State game is going to be critical. I think Iowa State is going to be better than they are this year so far, like how they finished. I don't know if they'll be ranked, but they're probably still going to have Rocco back. So it's going to be tough. But I think Iowa could dog that one out, finally get a win column back in the series. It's been hard for them to beat Iowa State in Kenneck. They haven't beat Iowa State in Kenneck since 2018. It just feels like whoever the road team is has that better edge in that game. And I look for Iowa to really take advantage of it. But man, if they could get that schedule with Hicklinski, whoever's that quarterback, and we'll talk more about it later in different episodes. We're going to do bowl game preview. I got so much Hawkeye football to talk about. But, breaking down that schedule after that, we do not know the order of these games. But Iowa is going to play next year, I believe, if I'm 100% correct on the schedule, and I might miss a couple opponents down there. But I believe I just need 9 of them. I believe I'm 100% sure on this. Their home conference opponents are Wisconsin, Nebraska, obviously on Black Friday. So that date is set. They play Northwestern either on the road or at home. I think they do play Northwestern at home. I'm going to have to look at that one. I think they play Northwestern, Ohio State. That's one of your tough ones. But you get them at Kenneck. That's what I love. They haven't played. Ohio State hasn't came to Kenneck since 2017. So you get Ohio State. That's your 4th home game. And I think you only get 4 Big Ten home games because there's 7. And then your road games are at Minnesota, at Illinois, at Washington. That's that big conference road game. At Michigan, that is tough. At Michigan is one of those that you just look at on the schedule and is like, man, we're going to the big house. And then at Purdue. Yeah, I think those are all the opponents. I think I got that right, actually, from the top of my head. But, man, I don't even want to make early season predictions, but I do think they'll go 3-0 in that Iowa State stretch. I think they'll definitely beat Purdue. That's 4. I think they're going to get either Washington or Illinois on the road, but they're going to lose one of those. I'll take Illinois on the road. And then, obviously, they'll beat Northwestern, Minnesota, Nebraska. That's 7. Wisconsin, that's 8. I see them losing to Ohio State, Michigan, Washington. So that's 3. So 9-3, 8-4. We could be staring down another 8-4. But that's what I'm saying is Iowa can take it to the next level next year. And when I look at the schedule right now, and I say, hey, we're going on the road at Michigan, Ohio State, or Washington. If they can win 2 of those 3 games, that is how Iowa gets into the playoffs. But this was the first year where Iowa did not lose a game that we didn't think that they were going to win. I mean, we didn't think they were going to lose. Like last year, right? They lost to UCLA on the road. They lost to Iowa State at home. They lost to Michigan State on the road. Man, those were three really bad losses. The year before, they lost to Minnesota on the Cooper DeJean punt return. The year before that, they lost to Nebraska when Nebraska was bad on Black Friday. They lost to Illinois on the road too. And then the year before that, obviously the Purdue and Wisconsin games. So this was the first year where we didn't see that happen. So when I put in my season predictions, I always pick a game that I think Iowa's going to win, that I'm going to have them lose. And I think that would probably be either that at Illinois or at Washington game next year. But so impressed with Mark Gronowski and what he did this year. He didn't have the most flashy passing numbers. He had great rushing numbers, but he did his job. He came in and he won. He came in and he led some cool game-winning drives. It's cool to see his progression. When he comes into that Iowa State game with 2 minutes to go and he's shaking. That guy can't drive you down the field. I think Mark can drive Iowa down the field and win that game if he's the quarterback. I mean, if he was where he is now. And, having the Michigan State game-winning drive, basically a Penn State game-winning drive, it helps, and it really does. And I'm super impressed with Iowa. Super happy to be a Hawkeye fan. We are over our time. Make sure to like and subscribe. We got more Iowa Hawkeye content coming your way. Next Sunday, we're going to figure out who's in the bowl game. I think whoever wins this, if Texas loses to A&M and Michigan loses to Ohio State tomorrow, I think Iowa definitely Iowa right now would be the next team in the Big Ten to play in the ReliQuest Bowl, and I think they would play Texas, assuming Texas would lose to A&M, because I think USC would get the Citrus Bowl, and I think Michigan would want to take the Las Vegas Bowl. I think they would probably put Michigan, or no, they would probably put USC in the Las Vegas Bowl to take on someone like maybe a Big Ten interconference matchup, maybe a USC matchup against Washington, something like that. I don't know, but I think Michigan in the Citrus Bowl again. Everybody, thanks for watching. Go Hawks. We'll see you later.